Wait, what? There's a preview? Oh, shoot.
Let's see.
Oh my,
that's a good
oh,
one.
it's Silk.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh, wait,
I don't know who that
what?
would be. And I'm not
Oh,
allowed
that's
to say.
crazy. We're getting a new spider hero.
Thank you, Tony,
No,
for
that's
bringing that along
insane.
with ya.
What?
Duke, I know you brought
That's
it up,
awesome.
and I believe we-
What's going on, guys? It's Char here, and today we're kind of cozy maxing a little bit, so don't mind the fit. Fantasy Flight Games had a recent LCG Fireside chat that I heard there was some really interesting stuff talked about. So we're going to do a bit of a reaction today, not to the entire thing, just, cutting to the sections that are most important. We're going to see what they have to say. I'm going to add my own commentary to it, and yeah, let's go ahead and get to this video. Okay, so here we are at the Fantasy Flight Games YouTube channel. As you can see, it was streamed 47 minutes ago with 2,000 views. I hear they're talking about Marvel and also Arkham in this, also according to the description that is true as well. We're just gonna start this and we'll comment on anything that's really notable, anything I want to tell you guys or talk about, and let's go ahead and get to it. So here we are at the beginning, just making sure that the sound isn't too loud here. I'm going to try and, I don't think there's any captions, so we're going to just skip ahead to where it starts proper.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back.
So we're just going to take a look here
Live.
today.
I'm your host, Xander Tabler, and as you might know, we're going to be talking about our living card games today. And this is one of our fireside chats, which we revealed this fall, which will be, chats with...
So I guess we're talking with the designers of the game or something to that extent, so it's pretty cool. We know that Tony's the one who did the design for Next Evolution and a couple of heroes in that wave. I like his designs, and I want to see what they have to say about the game. All right, so let's keep it going.
That we didn't get something in Q4 last year, but we're coming back strong.
We're coming back strong. And as I know many
So
of you in
Jim
chat
Cartwright,
know,
it's the
we've
head of
got
the studio
game designers
apparently,
Tony Fitch and
Fantasy
Duke
Flight
Harris
Games.
today
It's pretty
to join
interesting,
us to
didn't
talk
know
about
that.
building card game lines
Duke
and,
Harris
Marvel
must be
Champions
from
respectively.
Arkham Horror.
So
Okay.
if you are new to our Fireside
Cool.
chats, which I am sure
Got everyone in
most of you are, this is
Xander,
the second one.
he's kind of like
We
the
are
social
going to
media
discuss
head for
specific
Fantasy
with
Flight.
you as the community,
He had a really
getting some
good
details and
interview
questions
with
that
the
you
Winning
all
Hand
have
recently,
about
so
specific game lines
let's
that
go ahead and see
we
what they're
may
talking
see
about.
Living card games. In the future, it could be trading card games, it could be board games, it could be all sorts of things. We'll try to let you all know.
Today is only LCG, so there should be a ton of Marvel stuff in here for us to talk about, which should be pretty fun.
Like a Gen Con. This is not going to be our big announcements where we reveal the next 18 expansions and what's coming and each hero pack and all these different things. That's not what these are for. This is supposed to be a more intimate conversation, giving you all details for those of you players who are really engaged with these communities, and let you all know what's coming, answer all the questions that you all have about what is already here, provide
Sure.
insight into what's happening behind the scenes.
I'm excited for this. I've never seen one of these, so.
As well as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay.
Because of some port delays.
Oh, they're
Just like
clarifying the
a little bit behind.
release
We expect to see
dates.
them in
Okay.
March. Nothing serious. That's when you could expect those to drop.
They just said
And
in
then for
March.
the Ground City campaign.
And to get specific on the Investigator expansion and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that is only delayed in some territories. Many territories are
yes.
still going to be seeing it on the planned release date, but just depending on where you are.
Interesting.
The United States being one of them will be slightly delayed. We'll work to get you all information on what the expected release dates are for your territories as soon as we possibly can.
Oh, so there isn't a finalized release
This is our
date.
announcement that there are some-
Wait, so what territories is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. not delayed? Now, I haven't talked about this on the channel. That's kind of interesting because I assumed it was delayed to like March 7th everywhere, but they said in some territories it's not going to be delayed. Do I become an insane person and do expedited shipping from another country that has English cards? We'll have to wait and see. I don't think so, but maybe. Never say never.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be very clear, right? I know there probably was some trepidation when they saw, oh gosh, we're talking to the, the head of studios coming out to talk about LCGs. What does that mean? I want to be very clear. LCGs are thriving for us.
Oh, that's
the model's
great.
Extremely important to us. We created that experience in the late 2000s. It's very much a thing we want to make sure that we focus on and have intentionality towards, right? We've grown our design teams. We've grown we have a team in the studio.
They're kind of reiterating that the living card games are doing
of
really
living
well,
card games.
which
And
is
so,
a good
We
thing.
just wanted to make sure that before we got into any other deep dives here, that we kind of alleviated some of the fears that might be coming up in chat that like LCGs aren't going anywhere. We love them. They're doing great, and you can continue to expect more of them from us. So
That's awesome.
And so, thank you for
Marvel
the general
Champions
updates.
doing well. We
I
knew
know
that.
there
They
are
added
specific
another
answers to these
designer
game lines
and
in
whatnot,
chat.
so
Tony, can you
that's
tell
pretty
us
good to have
about
confirmation.
What is going on in Marvel Champions?
Announcement next Thursday for the next hero that is coming
Wait,
out
next
for-
Thursday?
for Marvel Champions.
We're announcing 2 heroes?
Yeah. Additionally,
What?
next Thursday, we're doing a live stream here with some Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. gameplay. That
Oh
I'm
my,
really excited
okay,
to be
wait.
able to
They announced
show
so
off
much.
that
We're getting a
and
new
exclusive
hero
to
reveal
everybody.
next Thursday. I will be
And I do wanna
prepped
call
and
out,
ready.
a cool opportunity that I'm getting to visit the Portal Game Store in Manchester, Connecticut, for an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of a pre-release
Portal
preview
Game Store
of the
in Manchester,
expansion. So I'll be
Connecticut.
there February 21st and 22nd. So if you're in the area, come on by and check it out.
Nice. That's awesome.
Wait, hold
Glad you're
on.
getting to travel for it and get.
Wait, so they're doing a preview on February 21st, 22nd. It was supposed to release on the 21st, but so the preview's gonna have product, but there's not product for the entire US. That's kind of confusing. I just need to confirm the release date real quick. I'll probably do it after the stream, but that's kind of confusing. I would love to play it on the original release date, but delays happen, so let's
Yeah, it's
continue.
awesome. Your fans in different parts of the country for it.
Totally.
I am dying to play Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. next week. Do I get to play as any of the new heroes, or am I?
We'll have to negotiate that.
Negotiate? Okay, that's fair. I'll take it. But we do have some new stuff to share today and to go through. And so, Jim, I want to hand it over to you to make the the first statement here on what this is and what we brought everybody here for.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think
Okay.
where we want to start with
Bigger
LCGs
announcements,
to
let's
talk
go.
about is, what is a little bit of the history of LCGs, what was important about how the LCG model worked, things like that. And so
he's gonna be talking about
take
LCGs
back
generally.
To, go back to circa, back the Wayback Machine to late 2000s. And we have an environment in which there's a lot of trading card games and the blind buy model and all of those things. And so the LCG model was really created in-house to talk about, to address specifically the idea of, the blind buy purchase model and how can we create a consistent experience for players and fans that isn't necessarily about pay to win or buying in the most.
Pay to win. I'm surprised he said that, considering they make Star Wars Unlimited. It's kind of a TCG
first,
model.
LCG brought in that concept very well, right? It was this idea of we're going to release regular content, but it's all going to be.
What was their first LCG?
so that
Was it Lord of the
nobody feels like
Rings?
they're missing out. And,
I'm surprised they won't name
that
it, maybe
was,
because it's
I
kind of
think
like
still and will always
MIA
be
or
at the
dead.
heart of what makes an LCG, right? That's some of the most important things that we have. It also it alleviates a lot of the some of the stress of how do you get involved with it's supposed to be in a more accessible model.
I agree.
Feel like you can
It's
just
very
go in,
much
pick
more
up a pack off
accessible,
of the shelf,
and you can play
pick
the
up
game.
back those days, a deluxe box off the shelf and get
Yeah.
going, right? And all of that stuff was great, and I think that the model itself proves out that there's plenty of fans who are interested in that, players who want to go down that route. But it didn't come without its own set of additional types of problems, right? As the game, became
Balloons
very
in
big
size.
and unwieldy,
Yeah.
right? We started we can go into recent Arkham history, right, where we had it used to be Mythos packs at $15 a pop, and you could, but then it was here's a deluxe box and 6 packs to tell your story, and we realized in the discussions of wow, what happens when a store has the deluxe box, pack 1 and 2, pack 6, but nothing in between. Right, it stops them from being able to actually,
Are they talking about kind of older releases
story,
that
kind of breaks the
don't
play experience. And so
get
we tried to address
renewed?
that with the way we repackaged all of the content, kind of brought them into these bigger experiences. But that's really kind of a band-aid fix, because long term, as we just continue to release products over and over and over, it means that we end up with for stores, it's very difficult to stock everything.
I agree.
There's
Yeah.
still a lot of, and
You
the
can
bigger
only
that
really
catalog
stock the
becomes,
newest stuff.
more
It's kind of
space
hard
they
to
have
get new
dedicate
people
to
into the
if
game.
they're gonna run the
Not Marvel
And
Champions
from the player
specifically, because
side
you
of
just
things,
need the core
imagine
box and any
walking in
hero
as a
pack.
brand new player now into Arkham Horror Marvel Champions and seeing just a wall of content and products that you can buy. Where do you start? How do you know what to do, right? You can go to communities, and y'all have been doing a great job of making sure that we're guiding our new players through these experiences. But what happens when they don't know those communities exist yet? How do
Right.
we help new
The
players
onboarding
connect?
problem
And
is
as we look
tough
at the
for an
history of living
LCG.
card games, we realize this has actually been a problem since day one, and something that we've never really been able to truly figure out how to solve. It's always been the problem that as a game continues to be successful, as these two games certainly have, we continue to see
Awesome.
it be
Love that
more and more
reiterated.
difficult to draw in new players. And realistically, if someone were to try to come into either of these games right now and be like, I'm going to go and buy everything, the amount of money you're investing in that kind of breaks the accessibility part of our promise. For
That's
LCGs, right?
That's an
so-
interesting critique to have, because even when you get into a TCG for the first time, you don't ever. I've never gone into a TCG or met someone who got into a TCG who is like, I'm gonna go into this game and I'm gonna buy everything. And a TCG example would be like master sets. So it's like, it would be way more money than it costs to get into Marvel Champions, even buying everything at MSRP. That being said, I don't disagree that there's an onboarding problem. It's extremely hard to stock older hero packs, and there's just so many heroes and scenarios and expansions in the game. Obviously, it's not feasible to reprint it forever or just stock all of it. So I agree with that, but I feel like the onboarding is really low for Marvel Champions specifically. Because you just need the core box. And I know that there was an interview on the Windy Hand or something that they kind of reiterated they thought about doing a revised core box for the mutants. I think they should have done that. So not that it replaces the old core box, but it should have been a box with like 3 villains and maybe 3 X-Men. And it should have had a standard 3 or something, or maybe just standard 1 with a different art. And it should have just been something that's new on the shelves. It has new content for people who are already in the game to pick it up and do that, right? It has new content because it's 3 new villains and 3 new heroes. So even if you're already into the game, you can do that. But also for stores that don't want to constantly stock the core boxes from 2019 at this point, they'd have something new that this is what you need to play the game. So you either start with the core box or the second version of the core box. It gives you everything you need, the tokens, the dials, whatever. It could be X-Men themed or whatever have you. I think that was a good idea that they shelved. Obviously, they probably have their own metrics that they thought it wouldn't be very successful, but I don't agree with that. I think they should have done it. And that kind of would have, for Marvel Champions specifically, maybe solved this onboarding problem. Again, I don't necessarily think he's wrong, because if someone wants to get into the game and buy everything, it is a lot of money, but I don't know if that's an onboarding issue. I think you can just buy the core box in like 1 or 2 hero packs, and you have so much content there already before you even need to expand out.
We have had to kind of come back around.
Let's see what he says, though.
What is, like, how can we address some of these issues, right? And I think that there's things that come around from the product side. I think there's also some things that enter into this space from the design side. I think there's a lot of these things where, as we started to really dive in as a studio about how can we think about keeping it breezy and light for players to keep coming into the game and finding new players and bringing them on board, while also maintaining the expectations of what the LCG model promises for all of our fans who've already adopted the model and are playing these games regularly, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's really, I think, these are 2 of the things that we've started to look at and come together with. And ultimately, it led to the decision that we need to start to retire some of our products.
Oh, he's going to be talking about something. Retiring products is scary, but that was kind of what I was talking about. It's just not feasible to stock Marvel Champions the entire history of the game at one time. I mean, I don't know about Arkham. I'd assume it's a bit less popular than Marvel Champions probably, so it's even less feasible for that. I know at my local game store, there's a ton of Arkham and a ton of Marvel, but it's still not even close to everything. But one thing I keep thinking on this revised core box idea, I think it was kind of a no-brainer, especially if you're struggling to get people interested in the core box to like have that printed, or like kind of some of the older hero packs. I think the revised core box would have gone crazy. You could have seen, like, there's some people who had issues with like reprints. Maybe instead of like 4 Avengers Mansions, it comes with like 4 Helicarriers, 4 Professor X's, and then what would the Mockingbird equivalent for the X-Men be, like 4 Colossus or something? And then the heroes in the box would be Cyclops, Wolverine, and one more, probably Storm or Phoenix or something. Probably not Phoenix, that'd be a odd box. Maybe we go like Rogue, Cyclops, Wolverine, or something like that. Just something fun. It's a good mix of the traditional X-Men. I don't know. But he's talking about retiring product, which is scary because I know that Doctor Strange and Captain America, who are 2 extremely popular heroes, have been out of print for a little bit, or it's been hard to get a copy, and War Machine recently joined that list. But let's see what he has to say.
This doesn't, of course, mean that, we thought about, do we want to do a new edition, right? But that, of course, it invalidates everything that you had. We didn't want to do that, right?
New edition.
These are great games with great mechanics and tons of design space that we can continue to explore. And so it didn't make sense to restart a new edition, even though that's something we may have done in the past, right? We've done that with an LCG before, with the Game of Thrones one. And
Oh, okay. So they did talk about different LCG Game of Thrones. I don't know anything about this. A revised edition, yeah, I would never recommend doing that for Marvel Champions. If you want to reprint a pack and like errata the cards with like the new rule set or to make the wording more clear, sure. But it's the same card through and through. Having a revised core box that like changes the mechanics fundamentally, it just wouldn't work for Marvel or probably Arkham at this point. There's just so much content for both games. It just wouldn't work.
So we wanted to make sure that what we were doing was something that players could, all the stuff you have, continue to play with it.
I agree. You can't do a huge revise.
All the old stuff. And it started to, as we started to talk about that idea, it started to crystallize across the studio of ways that can benefit not just the players and the stores.
It's weird to say retiring products
and
benefits
and being able to free
people.
up some space for them as well. So I think it's probably a good time for us to. I mean,
they're going to talk about it for Marvel
what that meant
Champions.
on the design side for you to be able to have that new space to think about of like, we're going to retire stuff.
Wait,
so I've been monologuing
that's
Do you
weird.
want to talk about what it means to retire? I don't think
Oh,
we
yeah,
really.
of course.
Yeah, I don't know what that
Yeah, no, you're
means.
absolutely right.
This is kind of
This is
interesting
what I love
and
about
scary.
live, streaming, is that you have people around you can kind of help you along with some of those things, those points. So I think that what we mean is that some of these products are over time going to be out of print, right? We have,
Captain
we've
America
database
and
approach
Doctor
is part of,
Strange
again,
has been.
why we've been spending the last couple of years actually talking about and figuring out how this works and making sure that we're making the right decisions based on the data that we have. And so we noticed that there's a lot of kind of front-loaded sales, of course, when we launch new products, right?
I agree,
You're going
yeah.
out and grabbing all the new stuff because you're excited to play with it. And then obviously the back catalog sells over time, but it really starts to diminish.
Taper
the amount
off
of demand we
after a
actually see in
couple
the
of
market.
years.
And I know sometimes it's hard to see the difference between like, but there's a couple of people who really want to get that piece, that one product that's out of print. But the reality is when we actually go and find, do an analysis of what that actually looks like, we're talking about not enough to even sustain a printing. And so we have to.
That's the truth of business.
Let's trigger our minimum quantities that we're going to order anyway, in the hopes that we, down the line, even though we know it's slower, maybe get there. And I think that hasn't proven out to be great. And I think this is a model.
They don't like sustaining products by doing minimum printings over and over because it's just not feasible, I guess.
The thing that I think we talked about in the prep for all of this was the idea of if you're a current player who goes out on day one and buys everything when it comes out, the purchasing for you is going to change not at all.
Yeah,
that's true. It wouldn't change for me at this point, but catching up this past year, this would have affected me for sure.
And then part of that actually is about retirement, which actually, Tony, I want to kick back to you.
Yeah.
To talk about what does it mean to be retired as a product, as content.
This is interesting. It's going to be Marvel Champions related, I think.
One of the things that we have to grapple with is that over time, as products retire, they're not going to be available to people. And so any cards, any scenarios, any heroes, any investigators in those products will no longer be available. So what we are going to do to tackle that issue,
are we reprinting?
We're going to establish what we're calling the current environment, which includes all of the current products that are being produced, minus anything that is out of print. So this will be the core sets for each product and the last 2 to 3 years worth of products for that game.
They're retiring a ton of stuff.
Else, and the current environment will be grouped together in what we're calling the legacy environment. So I want to emphasize up front that everything we design going forward is always going to be backward compatible. So you'll still be able to use your new stuff with your old stuff.
Like, if you've got the cards, you can play with the cards.
Yeah, exactly. But if we have designs that rely on certain player cards from past packs that have gone out of print, then we need to bring those back into print. So
they're reprinting cards.
Doing more reprinting of select cards that we think are very important.
So Sorcerer Supreme might be coming.
There may also be opportunities for us to,
because Doctor Strange is out of print,
that are perhaps above the curve, that are too powerful and become too ubiquitous in the player card pool, go into retirement. So newer players don't have those cards kind of skewing their deck building, whereas players in the past can still play with those cards in whatever.
Wait, what?
Players,
this is crazy. What did he say?
Ubiquitous in the player. There may also be.
Okay, I gotta pause on this point real quick because I had to kind of think on it. Well, I need to let him finish it. there's a couple of thoughts I have here. I think from a business logistics standpoint, you have to retire products immediately. I totally understand that, for sure. I wish there was some sort of like print to, print to demand type of thing where, they could go through FFG specifically and be like, I really want this, this, and this set. And like, I don't care about the inserts. I don't care about this, or that. I just want these cards. Not like you're buying singles, but like, I need the Doctor Strange Hero Pack because it has this, and this card, and I love Doctor Strange. What you're saying is all the first, this sounds like waves 1, 2, and 3 are just completely going to be non-existent. And it's one of those things where, for Marvel Champions specifically, how do you do that? It's like the entire Guardian wave. Like, if the Guardians are your favorite from the MCU, how does that work? I don't think it does. And that's an interesting discussion that we have to have. But this card is even crazier because it sounds like there's going to be a current rotation and a legacy rotation. Even though it's not a competitive game, there's no rotations at all. So you can play with whatever cards you have the game has released. But this is really weird that he's even bringing up this point where if a card is so old in the legacy format and they make like a new nerfed version of the card because it's so ubiquitous, the first thing that's coming to my mind is like a dive bomb, or like, are we going to get a new dive bomb that isn't, it's going to be like 5 damage to each enemy and then 2 to everyone else so that the numbers are a bit more aligned? Or is it like, I don't know what he could possibly mean by this. He needs to finish the point.
Certain cards that are perhaps above the curve, that are too powerful and become too ubiquitous in the player card pool, go into retirement. So newer players don't have those cards kind of skewing their
timestamp this.
Go
into retirement.
The past can still play with those cards in whatever scenarios or decks that they like.
Yeah.
That's really weird.
Also be
that is
up the
really
opportunity
weird.
For us to improve on past cards that came out just a little not good enough to actually see play. We can redo those cards basically either under a new title or under the same title with revised text in a way that makes them more playable without feeling like we are
new title or old title with revised text. This is really cool. So on the other end of the spectrum, I'm not sure why they'd even mention the nerfing part. So, okay. So I think what they're doing is we're actually getting erratas. That's what this sounds like. There are cards in the game, but they don't like their power level. So when they print a new version of it, it's going to have a worse effect. It's going to be the same card. I'm really worried if they do that because I just don't like that direction at all. Essentially, we're taking a card that everyone has loved and used, and even if it's strong, they love and use it. I'm thinking like the Maria Hill ally, and then we're getting it into, it's going to be reprinted in a different pack, maybe in one of these shield packs coming up. Well, the core set is weird, but let's say that they weren't reprinting the core set for some reason. They put Maria Hill in there, but instead of 2 cost, she's 3 cost. That completely changes the character. She would still be good, but not nearly as good. And I assume if you're playing in like an official capacity, even though there's really no official capacity, you're going to have a Maria Hill that has 2 costs. You're going to have one that has 3 costs. Why would you ever use the 3 cost one if you're an older player? But if they officially make a new printing of it, it's going to be weird to play with the older version on camera because it's like, oh, you're playing with the card that isn't nerfed or that didn't get an errata. That's really weird. But on the other end of it, it's weird how when they want to nerf the cards, I have such a strong reaction. But on the other end of it, he's talking about buffing older cards in some of these packs, whether they're like, I doubt he means hero-specific cards, identity-specific cards. I think he's meaning the cards that came in the pack that are just a bit under the curve, a bit too niche. It might get different traits to make them more in line with the current game. They might get increased damage, increased, health recovery, whatnot. I really like that. If you're going to buff a card, a physical errata makes sense because buffing a card just makes more cards that are playable. When you try and nerf a card that has come out in the past, it feels really bad from a player perspective. But I'm going to go back a little bit to let him finish this point.
Cards, basically either under a new title or under the same title with revised text.
So maybe like an example of a really strong buff could be like, let's say a team card also got the trait of the team. So like something insane would be like, I don't know, let's say I'm playing Iceman and I want to play leadership, Uncanny X-Men, whatever. And team building exercise plays for pays for his entire deck basically. But Uncanny X-Men is a team card with no other traits. Let's say they wanted to buff this for some reason, they would never do that. Uncanny X-Men's insane. They would give it the Team X-Men trait. It's a new printing, so this card now officially has the Team and X-Men, so you can use team building exercise on Iceman to reduce the cost. That's what I assume he's talking about.
In a way that makes them more playable without feeling like we are obsoleting or power creeping past content. There are also opportunities on the scenario side, and I'll let you
Wait,
side.
so I want to be clear on that again.
Opportunity for
Is it the same card that's getting an update like an errata, or are they making like a side grade, kind of like a spiritual successor? It sounds like it's the same card at the beginning.
we will also be.
I'm gonna listen to this
opening up
section
an
again.
Opportunity for us to improve on past cards that came out just a little.
We're improving on past cards is the exact wording. It sounds like the cards are getting buffed or
Good
errata.
enough to actually see play. We can redo those cards, basically either under a new title or under the same title with
Can we do those cards under a new title or the same
revised
title?
text.
With
You know,
revi- Okay, so they're saying there will be like spiritual successor cards. So when he means new title, maybe he's not talking about the traits. He's talking about like a completely new card, or it's gonna be the same card that just gets
way
buffed.
that makes them more
That's
playable
really
without
interesting.
feeling like we are obsoleting
That is
or
really
power
interesting.
creeping past content. There are also opportunities on the scenario side, and
This is even more interesting. We're talking about
Yeah, I mean,
scenarios.
definitely, if we look at it as if we're designing around a smaller set of cards or a smaller card pool, especially in something like Arkham LCG, where we really aim to give players sort of a knife's edge, a razor's edge of difficulty, it enables us to sort of balance in a different way and to kind of create a more curated experience without taking into account every single card that's been created up to this point. It also gives players, maybe who have joined the LCG a little bit after the core set was originally put into the world, it gives you more of an opportunity to play the game as it was when it was first released. With a smaller card pool, you might not be able to trounce Knight of the Zealot in the same way that you can with a larger card pool. So that's definitely a good design motivator for, or a positive that we can take from this as well. On
Yeah.
the design side.
Okay, this seems really weird because now it sounds like you're talking about like TCG, like they're actually discussing like formats. I think there's a couple considerations here. I think having a smaller, the logistical issue, it makes sense. You have a smaller, print run. There's only so many like cards that you can have printing at one time to where it becomes financially unviable. Sure. I also think it's really interesting that because there's only so many cards in print at one time, so many hero packs and expansions, that the scenarios they make with that in mind are more curated to the cards that are in play. I don't know if that necessarily means that they're easier or they have certain older mechanics that got trivialized by kind of these legacy cards, which is going to be a really weird divide when you're playing the game online and creating content and whatnot. I think it's really interesting to kind of make two formats. Conceptually, I don't think it's necessarily good or bad. Like I said, I think going to nerf cards that people love and have used throughout the entire game is probably not a good look, and it probably will have a lot of backlash. I'm just going to get ahead of that now and say it. But I think that there is opportunities. I kind of play with limited card pools already. If you know Marvel Rewind, this sounds fun. It's like, okay, we have to beat what's a new villain, Black Widow from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but only with constructed format cards. It's almost like set rotation. I feel like that'd be really fun, but we'll see what they have more to say on it.
there has been kind of a tendency in the past for these cooperative LCGs, when every product is always available, to tend toward making scenarios harder and harder and harder because they have to keep up with the player card pool as it develops. By introducing the current environment, which is what we're going to be primarily balancing around, we can have a more even power level on the player side so that the scenarios can remain accessible and winnable by players with card pools of all sizes.
I have thoughts about this. I don't think it's feasible to continually improve and try and counteract the strategies that players have, such as chump blocking. I do like the measures they put in place in certain scenarios that disincentivize it heavily. It's really fun. I also generally agree with the fact that you can't keep increasing difficulty of scenarios over and over and over. It's just not feasible. Eventually it'll come to a point where like not even like an expansion box hero can take out the villain on standard. And I don't think Marvel Champions is anywhere near to having that issue in the first place, but I do think it's a fun consideration. He's saying like, hey, we're probably never going to get another Ronin. I already knew that we probably never would. But I do like that, it has some interesting design considerations. I don't necessarily disagree that the designs might be more fun, especially if players want to limit themselves to the current environment. And if they don't and they play with all the cards, which I mean, I will as well, it'll also be fun. And then we also have those difficulty modifiers on our end, such as Standard 2, Expert 2, Heroic, and whatnot, to modular sets to tailor the difficulty exactly what we want. There's a lot of interesting stuff in this.
There are plenty of options in both Arkham and Marvel for increasing scenario difficulty.
Right.
So even if you have everything and are playing with your most overpowered Doctor Strange deck, you can still find a challenge by tweaking the difficulty in the ways that the game allows.
Mm-hmm. That is.
He name dropped Doctor Strange, which is funny.
We have some questions from the chat that I've seen already and some different pieces here, but I want to talk specifically about reprints. I know that we talked about this before. You mentioned reprinting specific cards that people like, but obviously with both Arkham Horror and Marvel Champions, there are characters in both that people really
that's what I was gonna say. That's really hard to do for Marvel.
Some of these things in the future once they're out of print. Thinking of like a specific hero or an investigator, you're like, has always been my Arkham Horror person. Can I have them again at some point?
We've actually had something like that in the LCG in form of like parallels and abilities to revisit or visit investigators in multiple different forms.
Oh, we're talking about like kind of spiritual successors of newer heroes.
It gives us more opportunity to revisit characters and revisit concepts that should hopefully feel really exciting. It's really exciting to us.
Yeah, and we'll be.
That is not a good answer. They essentially had a long-winded way of saying we are not reprinting these older guys once they're in the legacy, and that doesn't bode well for Marvel specifically, because how are we going to? We got all the core box Avengers, but how do you play Avengers without Captain America? He is the leader of the Avengers, so I don't know if I like that answer, or like I don't think that answer is going to go over well.
Marvel.
Let's see what the Marvel side.
Revisits of heroes. We're not going to make minor changes, tweaks around the edge, and then reprint the same kit. We want to give you a brand new experience with Captain America or Doctor Strange or whomever we are.
So they name drop both of the heroes that are out of play. Is this why? Or did they have like a larger big brain plan of why they were out of play? They're remaking Doctor Strange and Captain America? That would be insane if that's true.
Well,
let's let him finish his thought.
Revisits of heroes. We're not going to make minor changes.
So we're not doing minor erratas or anything like that.
We want to give you a brand new experience with Captain America or Doctor Strange or whomever we are designing for, so that you feel like as a long-term player that it's still an exciting product for you to pick up and for you to get these heroes back to the table, even if you haven't played them for years, because their other version came out 5 or more years ago.
For sure. And I think that's a really good point. And that's not saying that there's not going to be...
That's really exciting, but also really weird, because, again, some of these older hero kits have, like, kind of beloved kind of kits. I think Captain America, some people might find him boring, but I like his double resource generators. I can do this all day. Doctor Strange, players love his invocation deck. I also love his hero-specific cards, too. I do think it's really cool to revisit the same hero and just give him a completely new, fresh of paint. That's awesome. But man, I feel kind of, I kind of feel for people who come into the game, whether through my channel or other content creators who are like, man, I really want to play this Doctor Strange, and their options are going to be proxying the cards or buying them secondhand for an extreme amount of money. We'll have to see how this pans out. I can't anticipate the reaction here. Again, this is only like an hour ago streamed, and I feel like it hasn't made its rounds yet.
Stuff too. It's not all revisiting.
Right.
We're not just repackaging things and tweaking it. There's going to be a bunch of new content as well.
Yeah, there are a lot of...
But I don't know if this bodes well in a negative way, because if people really want new Marvel heroes, we're talking the Defenders, Fantastic Four, and instead we get a wave where we get Doctor Strange again. Maybe he's in a slightly different universe or outfit, and then we get Doctor Strange or Captain America again. I really don't know how that bodes over. I will say specifically, again, Fantasy Flight Games, I love the stuff you guys do. A Hulk remake would be very well received by me specifically. I love Hulk. I personally don't vibe with him in the game, but let's keep it going.
Exciting heroes in Marvel Champions, which I'm sure many of you are putting in the chat right now that we still definitely want to get to, and we will be in the very near term.
Oh, wait, okay, hold
A
on.
lot of exciting heroes in Marvel Champions.
Oh, he addressed
I'm
it
sure many
right
of you are putting
before.
in the chat right now that we still definitely want to get to, and we will be in the very near term. So we want to strike a balance.
We will be
between
in the near
making
term.
sure that the most visible, highest tier names are on the shelves, but at the same time, we're still bringing new and lesser known characters out that.
That's interesting. So maybe in an effort to kind of monetize more, kind of reading between the lines, we might get some expansions where it's like, okay, we'll do the Defenders, but we'll do like Daredevil and Luke Cage in the box, and then it's like throughout the wave, there's like 4 or 5 heroes, but like it's a retrain of Doctor Strange, and then one Defender, and then it's a retrain of Captain America. And because they want the recent products to sell, and because they're completely new products, which I appreciate. So if they're going to be redoing and reprinting, it's not really a reprint. If they're going to be redoing heroes with new kits, I like that it's a complete change. It's not a small tweak, so you feel like your old stuff is outdated. It's just 2 different Captain Americas, which I think is awesome.
People who love them can finally get their hands on them.
These are, at the end of the day, living card games that we want to feel like they're alive. They are changing, they are shaping, and we're able to shape the meta and push new challenges.
I think this is going to get a lot of criticism, but I don't necessarily... I think there's a lot of positive and negatives towards it, so I'll get ahead of that and say I'm excited how this is going to change the design.
New ideas onto the players for them to chew on.
Yeah, super exciting in both directions there. And so I think, you know, we could speak directly to a couple of different player types here. I know that a lot of people in the chat are, you know, probably our most dedicated players and fans of these games. You're tuning in here at 1 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. So is there anything you all want to speak to directly, Tony, to those who are, you know, really engaged with these games already and are looking forward to it?
Yeah, if you've been playing the game from day one and you pick up every product as it releases, this is going to affect you not at all. You'll still have your back catalog of products that you'll be able to use. You'll continue to be able to use them going forward. And it's basically just going to be...
I'm glad they're reiterating that to get ahead of the
Duke, we have
criticism, I think.
Potentially in the chat, or watching this, you know, a year down the road and seeing this announcement and not knowing what came before. Is there anything you want to say specifically to those new players or those who are looking to jump into an LCG?
Yeah, I mean, our hope is that this creates an easier entry point for you where you don't feel like you are beholden to older products, and that we are essentially supporting the line and creating...
That's interesting, because anyone who really gets into the game is really going to want all the content, no matter if it's the old or new version. But for someone who is casually into the game, I kind of agree where it doesn't make sense to keep printing Doctor Strange, Hulk, Captain America, even though they're super popular, because they just don't get the same sales. But if you release a new version of all these heroes for your really existing player base that really loves it, it's a new take and a new version, I think it could go over well and actually be pretty cool. It just really sucks to lose the older designs. I will say that.
We want it to feel less intimidating to new players who are coming in, and yeah, we just want to make it as easy as possible to step into the game line now. And I think this is a step toward that.
Yeah, I think that a barrier of entry for new players is just the fact that there's so much stuff out there that they feel like they have to do it in order, or that if they jump into the newest thing, it might be too difficult for them, or the card...
I don't think you have to do it in order. I just think that you should pace yourself.
And so we really want to make sure we have a curated experience where no matter what period you enter into the game, you'll be able to find awesome new products.
I don't necessarily disagree with this, especially if they're trying to help onboarding and new players. I think that's kind of smart.
Kind of brought this concept, I think, for us to in those initial conversations to understand is it's like the idea of a highway on-ramp, right? Yeah. Like at this point, if someone were to trying to get into Arkham, they have to go back to the start where everyone else started and kind of find their way along the highway, and there's no other way to get on. You have to get on really back there to really feel like you're part of the community, part of the game and its experience. And what we're doing here is we're not telling anyone they have to get off the highway. We're just putting on a couple of additional on-ramps at points along the way to help them get to the game, get to the...
It's really interesting they're using this term of on-ramping, but they didn't. I'm going to go back that they discussed a X-Men new core box, like a set 2 core box, and they didn't do that. Maybe the times had changed since that interview, or since, maybe this was a new decision on FFG. I feel like if you're looking for a new on-ramp point, the easiest point would have been a X-Men core box. Again, this is the third time I mentioned it this video, but if you're looking for an on-ramp, people feel it's weird when someone wants to just play the X-Men and Marvel Champions. You tell them, well, you have to buy the core box. Okay, who's in the core box? Claw, don't know who that is. Rhino, okay. Ultron, okay. What are the heroes? Spider-Man, She-Hulk, Iron Man, Black Panther, and Captain Marvel. They're like, well, I want to play the X-Men. Do I need this? It's like, well, technically you do, because you need the standard set and you need, the tokens and the dials, and it's just like really weird. I think, you could get by with just buying like Age of Apocalypse, but then it also feels extremely weird because it's the last expansion box of the mutant kind of wave, so it's kind of confusing.
And that,
it's confusing
I think,
for
is so
sure.
important because, at the end of the day, we all know that games are a thing where you're going to lose players over time, right? There's a lot of options out there. And so we want to make sure that the game grows and thrives, and the only way to really do that is to make sure we can keep bringing on new players to experience the awesome stuff that you all know is what you're already experiencing.
Yeah, everybody in the studio loves these games and wants to see them go as long as that we can possibly keep them going. And to do that, we need to be bringing in new players.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a new player issue,
I've
but
seen this question already in the chat, and so I think this is a good one to ask you all: is when can players expect this change to be taking place?
Oh, yeah, that's
running
a
out to my
good
store right
question.
now and buying every single copy of every single thing I see. And I'm like, I don't know when this is happening. What can you all tell the players about when to expect any changes that they like or that come along with this?
Yeah, I can start with this. I think that obviously not everything. We want to make sure that we are being smart about how we print products. We talked a little bit about we had some data that showed how long something being in print really continued to meet the demand that was out there. And so, we're not all of a sudden where everything
2 years was
right
their time frame.
Right, we look at everything to roughly 2 to 3 years is what we want it to really live in market. That shows the data that we have shows that that's kind of the best.
I'll see after
best
the
kind of
video
timeline to make sure that we're supporting everybody, so, and the new players who are coming in that time still get access to that content. So I would say that if you were prioritizing going and finding stuff on your store shelf, it is the things that as we looked at in terms of reprints. What is currently, we know that Captain America and we know that Doctor Strange are we know internally, and now we're confirming here. I know there's been a lot of speculation. Those are currently out of print in terms of products.
They've been out of
Those
print
have
for a
been in the market
while.
for a very long time, and the demand for print in terms of products. Those have been in the market for a very long time, and the demand is not there to be able for us to be able to justify that.
So I think it's really interesting. It's like a demand. It's completely a business kind of minded decision because, when you think of like the big, huge heads of the MCU or like Avengers and whatnot, like obviously you should always keep Captain America and Doctor Strange and Hulk on the shelf, but people have been in the LCG since the beginning. These products don't sell. And of course, Marvel Champions getting new players in all the time. Of course, for me, I got in last year, and luckily I was able to pick up, Doctor Strange and Captain America with no issue. It must have been, right before they went out of print. For a new player and like for players coming in, like there isn't enough players to warrant continually printing these heroes. This is a very business-minded decision. Although I love both of those heroes very much, I can understand why they're making it, and I wish there was another way to keep them in print. But we'll see what he has to say here.
So,
I think it's really interesting that they're confirming that, even though everyone basically knew for multiple months at this point, because you just couldn't find it and you couldn't buy it, and then local game stores would also just basically tell.
I think you're going to see a similar pattern arise over time, where that will be from, start picking up your older heroes or your older campaign boxes and investigator packs.
So it's really weird to kind of like sound the alarm bells on this. Obviously, someone getting into the game is never going to find this video, so it doesn't make sense. But someone who might be, kind of really getting into it right now, it's like, man, they said they wanted to avoid this idea of having to get on the highway at the beginning and going along in a straight line, but saying that you're not reprinting older stuff anymore, it kind of really exasperates that problem where it's like, well, I need to buy all of this stuff because it won't exist if I don't pick it up. It's weird. It's a weird issue.
Those would be the first things to go out, but we keep that window flexible because we again want to make sure we're reading demand properly. If something is absolutely selling out every time we do a printing, we want to make sure that we're getting more of that out. And maybe it takes longer for that to happen over time. But we want to be really cognizant that, again, we don't want to keep a giant wall of LCGs constantly in one space, in this huge space that's intimidating. It's really important for us for that. So don't buy everything, although stores want you to buy everything right now. But I mean, I think that the reality is that it is really about, picking and choosing. Not everything's going away on day one.
And just because something's out of print doesn't mean it won't be available in stores.
100%.
For
Yes,
some
that's a
period.
great point.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think this is a good time. I saw the question in the chat and a little bit of confusion about what this current environment will look like and how they'll know if is this current, is this.
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't think
Can
of
we
that.
talk a little bit about that, or at least give clues to what that'll be if we can't say the exact phrasing around what we expect that to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that we will want to establish in coming months, and over the course of, that's essentially a journey we want to take with you together.
No, they don't even have a ton
But
of
as far
info
as,
on
I
this.
saw that there was a question about if the Arkham Horror campaigns will be balanced with the legacy and the current environment altogether. And the simple fact is that they are essentially going to be two different modes of approaching the game. If you go in with the entire card pool
Against
with
the newest
entire card pool
expansion.
and all the interactions and all the beautiful insanity that comes with that, you're going to have a very different experience than if you are playing with that smaller card pool. And what we are saying is that we are
So they're making limited and official format, which is really interesting.
testing and designing and creating.
And they
with
only
that-
test
with
in
that
the
idea in
current
mind,
format,
that
which
players
is
won't
really
necessarily have all the
cool.
cards, at their disposal.
I don't know if this makes your experience very different, because my issue with kind of the wording and phrasing here is at least for me specifically, when I play through a new expansion box or something like that, I usually play with the heroes in the box, and I try not to make a super optimal deck. If Magic, I finished on my live stream recently, I played her in Aggression because she came in Aggression, and I used a large majority of her cards. I threw in Sorcerer Supreme and some, that was basically one of the few cards I threw in there because it's just, she's a Mystic. I want to play some of the Mystic cards, and Sorcerer Supreme is awesome. And I think she should have been reprinted with it, but that's a different story. But it's just it's really weird to give. I don't think his answer is necessarily wrong, and I don't think it's necessarily wrong to have a different experience, but I feel like most people's first experience with an expansion box or a campaign or anything like that is if you build with your entire card pool as soon as you get a new expansion box, yeah, it's going to be easy. I mean, if you have every card in the game, you can just make the most optimal deck and run through it with a Doctor Strange, Cable, Cyclops, or something like that. It's just weird. I feel like they're just trying to balance around the idea that the scenarios are just going to be a bit simpler and a bit easier / new player friendly, and I don't think that's an issue as long as there's depth in specific areas that can still make them fun, and if there's modular sets or certain levers you can tune that make it more difficult if you do want to have that challenge.
And so if you play Legacy against a campaign, you are going to have a different experience than you do if you play with the current. But we're not saying how you have to play.
Yeah.
We're not saying you have to play it one way or another. We want you to have fun. And, if fun for you is playing with every single card, that's great. If fun for you is, I'm definitely one of those players who likes that knife's edge, and so I will often give myself unreasonable restrictions. I'm someone who likes to play through Zelda with 3 hearts, no shield, through the end. I'm that kind of player. And so, yes, I go for that kind of thing. And not every player is going to be that way. So we want you to have what you want in that respect.
I love it. I'm going to be a Legacy player myself. I'm playing with every card. I'm doing the craziest possible, combos and things. But I know that, asking a new player to sit down at the same table as me, that's not going to be the same experience across, for both of us. And so, establishing that play group is a good thing, too. But I do want to say that for this current and Legacy environment, we will have, information on our website about what these things will be, so you all will have that knowledge.
Okay, it's going to be in the
Be
coming
able to say, oh, okay,
days.
I'm playing at a current environment table. I'm going to my local game store and we're getting together for this thing. Here's what I can pull from.
So they just mentioned going to the local game store and playing in the local current environment / Legacy. They better bring organized play. I'm looking at you, FFG, if you're watching this. I'm a big fan. I want it. I want to play with it. But obviously they didn't have any answers last time.
Obviously, Legacy's everything, so that one's easy.
Yeah,
but the
yeah.
current environment will be more strict on.
And we're going to dip our toe in this with the
Wait, I kind of was talking over him.
Knowledge going in. We'll have information on our too. about what these things will be, so you all will have that knowledge going.
I wonder if they'll do like
It's
current
okay,
or
I'm
legacy
playing a current
events.
environment table. I'm going to my local game store and we're getting together for this thing. Here's what I can pull from, and so that'll be something that's available. It won't be this, blob of like an idea of what it could be. We will be.
Oh,
clear
it's
about
going to be an actual supported format of play. There will be a list of everything in the current environment. That is really interesting. It's like a set rotation for an LCG, but not really because it's not competitive. That's really interesting.
Obviously, legacy's everything, so that one's easy. But the
yeah.
current environment will be more strict on.
And we're going to dip our toe in this with like the Arkham Horror FAQ and other elements in the coming year and stuff like that. So expect more of that as it
It might
develops.
affect rulings and whatnot.
Specific
Let's
now.
see.
All right, so I know another question that I'm sure is in the chat right now. I didn't see this one exactly, but will support for these games change in the future? I know that people have gotten used to exactly what this looks like, a standard release cadence of like 1 year, 2 expansions, and a scenario pack for Arkham. Big box expansion, a bunch of hero packs afterwards for Marvel. Can players expect something different, or is there anything you'd like to say about what you all are thinking about when it comes to the player experience of receiving new products?
Yeah, so our goal for the Marvel team is
let's
to get
see.
more products out more regularly. So we've had periods in the past where we've had droughts of several months at a time with no new product. We want to
Kinda
try
like
to
right now.
eliminate those going forward and get into a cadence that you all can expect. This time this year, we should be looking at this kind of product coming out. There are obviously things that will not always make that possible, but we are going to do our best to get to that point.
Well, and I want to make there's actually this is a good point to bring up here in this kind of, again, we're behind the scenes, we're a little bit more transparent, is that I think it's safe for us to say, and I'm willing to talk about the idea that, like, I know that part of the reason some of these bigger gaps have existed for Marvel was, we had some, we had Michael Boggs who went and, went to deliver, do other things in the world, as you do, right? And so we had to kind of react and pivot, and this brought you onto the team. We got you onboarded. We then needed to get more people on board, right? So we have more, and Caleb moved to, his new project and all of that.
Oh,
And so
they're gonna give a spoiler on the
sometimes all of these
project.
gaps that were there are not there because something broke in terms of the game as we do it, or we decided we were slowing down products. It was just a reality of the way
The
that
designers.
sometimes
Oh, okay.
works, and then making sure that everyone feels comfortable in the new role, right? Before the LCG world, you were designing board games all the time, and I think when you came over for the regular cadence of LCGs, it was like, wow,
This is insane. Yeah.
It's constantly
that was
designing.
something that I talked with Caleb a lot about when I first joined the game line, was just the breakneck pace of the LCG world, and it was just not sustainable. Talking to Caleb, talking to Boggs, they were burned out after the first couple of years of Marvel Champions development. And so over time, we've worked to give the developers,
All the
graphic
capes, all of
designers,
Caleb's
the
capes.
artists,
Just
everybody
kidding.
more time to make a more perfect game and more polished game for you all. And that has come at, unfortunately, the cost of sometimes having delays, gaps in releases. But we are trying to scale up our workforce, our work hours, so that we can get more products to you out at a pace that you are expecting.
Yeah. And this is also, I think, why we then went into the idea of let's build a focused team who can focus exclusively on the living card game model, right?
Yep.
Chris Gerber, that's he's directing the entire LCG team. We have all
Chris
of the
Gerber,
people who
cool.
work in that kind of team is all they are focused on is living card games specifically, right? That's how much this type of game is important to us, is that we built an entire part of our studio to really drive the idea that everyone here.
I really like this set. I didn't really mention that, but it's pretty fun. I like that they have the products on the side. Wait, is anything on the side that's going out of print? No, it's not. Those are all X-Men stuff. Smart.
Burnt out and everything else, and that,
Maybe it's showing what the current pool looks like. I don't know. I haven't seen their other streams.
Before we move on,
All right, this last one. Xander, take us
Most of
home.
the things that we came here to say, but I want to give you each a little bit of time to talk, specifically, Jim, you to all LCG players, and each of you to talk to your respective communities. Is there any message that you'd like to say here as we end this stream, or get close to ending this stream, directly to your communities?
Yeah. I want to reiterate kind of what I started at the top, and I'll keep this brief because I want to make sure that we get to the designer talks. But I think that it's important, right? The LCG model is very important to us as a studio that created it. It's thriving. We love these two games. We think they have a ton of design space left. And we want to make sure that we make them accessible for our new fans and players, while also making sure that we reward you for being long-term fans of the line. So basically, in closing, this model isn't going anywhere, right?
Tony, how about you with Marvel?
All right, last.
Yeah, there's so much exciting stuff that we have coming down the pike for Marvel. It's crazy. We've got Caleb's last design, his swan song. I'm so excited for that wave. We have Frank and Aaron's first designs as developers on
Caleb's last design.
And we have even a guest appearance by one Mr. Michael Boggs is going to be doing some guest designs for us going forward.
That's crazy. Michael Boggs designs.
Kind of address about the line going forward and that is that we're going to be moving away from our focus on trilogies of campaign boxes, and we're going to be doing more one-offs in the future because we have
going away from focusing. What campaign boxes have had trilogies? Was it Rise of Red Skull, Galaxy's Most Wanted, and then Mad Titan Shadow? And then you kind of had that buffer. Oh yeah, I guess that is a trilogy. And then you had the buffer of Sinister Motives, and then we got into the mutant stuff. So we're going away from trilogies. I don't mind that at all.
Products going out of print. We want to make sure that every corner of the Marvel universe is always available to people at any.
Oh wait.
Let
me see what this is.
In the future, because we have products going out of print.
So there's going to be a lot of revisited content.
Available to people at any
Wonder what people are going to
so
think about this.
Even though it was a lot of fun to do the trilogies of connected stories, we're going to be doing more of independent, standalone stories going forward.
I'm excited to see that.
That's fun. I feel like it's going to get a lot of weird backlash for people who don't watch the whole video or talk. I'm completely fine with them revamping and making new versions of the same hero because essentially it's a new hero. It just doesn't play the same. The only thing that is the same is the art on the hero card, basically, and even then it'll have different art. It's going to play completely differently. It'll take inspiration, I'm sure. At least I hope. I'm kind of making assumptions here. I hope that they're different enough to where it feels like you're playing someone completely new, and it's just like, which version do you prefer? I think that'd be a lot of fun.
All right, Duke, how about you?
Next week.
Next week.
I thought I'd give you a little preview.
Wait, what? There's a preview? Oh shoot.
Let's see.
Oh my.
Oh,
it's Silk.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh, wait,
I don't know
what?
who that would be. And I'm not
Oh, that's crazy. We're getting a new spider hero.
Thank you, Tony,
No, that's
for bringing that along
insane.
with you.
What?
Duke, I know you brought
That's
that up,
awesome.
And I believe we're going through a bunch of different.
It's really cool. And then we're going to skip to the end here. Oh, they showed off dinosaurs for Arkham.
As we announce all back next time.
That was really cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that reaction. I'm going to be talking about this probably more in depth here in the future. Thanks for watching. Thanks for chilling out. I got to run to the restroom. That's why it's a quick outro. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.